Today we're looking at notes 5-7, completing the square when a is not equal to 1 anymore. So for the examples, we will be using completing the square to convert from standard form to vertex form, then stating the vertex. So this lesson is going to be very similar to the previous lesson, except for this time our a values are not going to be 1. So here's the step that's different from before. So this first step, remember, we're still trying to take this standard form to vertex. Now we have to have a little pre-step before we can do what the first step was in the previous lesson. Here's the pre-step. You will have to factor out that a value from the first two terms. Remember that last term, like on the previous lesson, kind of hangs off the back of the parentheses here. So that last term, that y-intercept, will always hang off the back. So factor 3 out of 3x squared and you just get x squared. Factor 3 out of 24 and you get 8x. If you were to distribute it back, you agree that it would get back to the original, yes? I hope so. Okay, then this essentially becomes the previous lesson. Okay, now while the difference is the 3, of course, will drag down. The 3 will drag down, and now we're getting to the part where we make the quantity squared, because that's what makes vertex form. Okay, we've got this quantity squared here, and then we have the vertex. So again, the same way we find this quantity squared here. Now we ignore the a value, just like we did in the previous lesson. You just didn't know you did. You ignore the a value here, and then you cut this in half. Okay, so cut this value in half. What is half of 8? And it is 4. All right, and again, you still drag down that value out there. Okay, and then if you need to, remember I told you last time that how you get the value that you undo? So I'm going to go ahead and write it so that way you can see and you can believe me. Okay, how you get the value out here that you undo is you take this value and you square it. So that's 16. Multiply 16 by 3. Remember, you take this value and you multiply it by the a value. So 16 times 3 is 48, positive 48. So to undo positive 48, we will subtract 48. But just in case, if you wanted to see it, I totally get it. I'm a seeing is believing type of gal myself. So we're going to take this 3 out in front, the x plus 4, the quantity x plus 4 squared, and we're going to expand it, okay? And we're just going to verify that that's really what that value should be. So remember, before I distribute in, I'm going to go ahead and tackle the FOIL here. So that's going to be x squared plus 8x, right? 4x and 4x gives me 8x plus 16. And of course, I'm going to drag down that 3. Okay, then I'm going to distribute 3 to all the terms, so I would get 3x squared plus 24x plus 48. What do you know? So remember, this first term matches. That's as I expected. Okay, this second term also matches. That's as I expected. That's how we did that process to make sure that those first two terms would match. And then I've already accounted for that last term, the plus 1, so I've already got it right here. I don't want this positive 48, so that's what I undo by subtracting the 48, okay? So I wanted you to see it, but I also wanted you to know the shortcut, okay? So now hopefully you're good. So y equals 3 times the quantity x plus 4 squared. Combine our like terms, so negative 47, wouldn't you agree? And then I'm going to need to come over here to write the vertex. That's a v for vertex, would be negative 4 comma negative 47, because I'm going to want this space down here to check our work, right? Because of course we don't want to just do this blindly and be like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's the answer. No, no, no. We want to actually check. Okay, so let's check. So let's take y equals 3. I'm going to expand my vertex form. Okay, and then minus 47. Then, of course, like before, when I distribute the quantity x plus 4 times the quantity x plus 4, I get x squared plus 8x plus 16, and then I drag down the minus 47, and then I get y equals 3x squared. I really need to like scoot this up because I'm going to need one more line, aren't I? So y equals 3x squared plus 24x, it's really coming together, plus 48 minus 47, we're almost there, y equals 3x squared plus 24x plus 1. Hey, does that match? Yes, it sure does. Check and check. We've just checked ourselves. Great. Okay, so let's now do another example just because it's always good to at least see 2 and not just 1. So remember that first step now, when we have that a value other than 1, this is the only difference from before. Well, I say only, but it's one of them, one of the small differences. Factor out that -6 from both of your first terms. Okay, so that would become x squared here, and factor out -6. Okay, so 12x divided by -6 is going to give us a -2x. Okay, and if you kind of like do it and you're like unsure, then always distribute back mentally and make sure it gets back to that. -6 times x squared is -6x squared. -6 times -2x does get me back to positive 12x. So you've just checked that you factored correctly. Okay, once you factor out that a value, then this becomes the part where you finally make this a quantity squared. Okay, so now to get that quantity squared, remember you cut this value in half. So the half of -2 is -1. Okay, and always drag down that number. And then you need to find out what number goes here. What do I need to undo? Okay, and you get that value mentally by taking this value, squaring it. So -1 squared is 1. That's a positive 1. And then 1 times -6 is actually -6. So to undo -6, here's a first. We're going to add 6. And again, I won't require that I see this step out here that I'm about to show you unless you're like messing up every single time. Then I'll be like, hey, you're getting this number wrong. You probably need to come out here and prove what number goes out here. So again, I'll just show you how to do it. How do you prove what number goes out here? Is you take this -6, x, the quantity x minus 1, and expand it. Okay, drag down the -6, distribute this through so you get x squared. The -1x and -1x would create -2x. Then -1 times -1 would be positive 1. Okay, distribute the -6x squared, so -6x squared, positive 12x, right, as I'm distributing, and then -6. So again, this matches this term, this matches this term. It's this fella that I don't want, okay, because I've already got the -9 accounted for. I don't want that. So how do I get rid of a -6? I add 6. That's how I undo. Okay, so that's just your proof if you needed it. So last step for my answer is going to be to combine these terms. So that's -3. And then my vertex would be +1, -3. Okay, let's box that up. But let's check ourselves. All right, let's check. So check y equals -6. Let's expand x minus 1, x minus 1, -3. So let's double check to make sure the answer I provided multiplies back to the original problem. Otherwise, we're in trouble, right? So distributing the quantity x minus 1 to the quantity x minus 1, I get x squared, -1x, -1x, so -2x plus 1 -3. Now, of course, I distribute the -6 throughout, so -6x squared throughout the parentheses. Positive 12x minus 6, drag down the -3. So y equals -6x squared. Positive 12x, why was I stuck? -9, so does that match the original problem? It sure does, so we're good to go.